step in the process.
The last step is forgiveness.
Yeah. Because then that's freedom, right?
The gift that you give yourself, they say.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Theo. I'm ready if you're ready.
Yep.
All right, let's do this. I'm your host, Mark Meinke, and this is the Meinke Show podcast. Today, we have in studio Theo Fleury. It's on the fly production. Theo, thanks for being here, brother.
My pleasure.
It's you are one generous dude. You know, you did my show earlier a few months back, and working with snaps. It seems like you've really dedicated all of your time and effort into giving back to the community.
For sure. Well,
just bring the mic a little bit more.
When
there you go.
You know, when I started on this journey, 10 years ago, I was the only intent was, sort of a selfish thing.
How so?
Was I just wanted to tell my story and then move on to something else. And what happened was, I started to run into a whole bunch of other people who had similar experiences, such as myself, on the sexual abuse spectrum. But then I started running into guys like you, military guys who suffer post-traumatic stress disorder and, people who've been bullied and, all this stuff. And I was like, geez, this is bigger than just sexual abuse. This is all about trauma in general. And, all these people looking to heal from, these trauma experiences that they've had. And so, it's sort of just expanded, to the full spectrum of, trauma in general.
Do you find that there's any use to putting a dividing line to say this type of trauma or that type of trauma? Trauma is trauma.
Yeah, because, the one thing we discovered is that, my emotional pain, which is a symptom of or a remnant left behind from trauma, is emotional pain. And so my emotional pain and your emotional pain are no different. There's no scale. We feel our pain exactly the same way. But because we love to compare, ourselves to other people so that it lessens, our emotional pain or our emotional burden. But what we've discovered is that the brain doesn't decipher between physical and emotional pain. It just knows that we're in pain. And so, and when we start to unpack our trauma history, that emotional pain becomes more of a centerpiece and a center point. And so, the goal is always to alleviate pain and suffering in the world, because that's all we see on a daily basis is people that are in pain and are suffering. And so, and I think that's unnecessary, because there's a stigma attached to emotional pain, especially for men, is that we're not allowed to talk about, our deepest, darkest
and I would say, especially on top of that, for the alpha males. I mean, you were a pro athlete, and that's, the icon, the idol, the one that people look up to as the hero. Right. And the same with soldiers, especially frontline infantry, combat armed soldiers. Yeah. We were at the top of the food chain, and the ultimate alpha male kind of deal, running into gunfire, crazy shit. And I think it's tougher for people that have been on that level, with whether that's the social strata or whatever it is. But once you've been that hyper alpha male, then it's just all the tougher to admit. I don't want to say weakness, but to admit that you've been hurt.
Yeah.
That you're vulnerable.
For sure. And, that's the key word to all of this, is when I came out, I told my story in a very vulnerable way. And, the feedback that I got was exactly, what it was supposed to be. Man, you got courage. Man, you have strength. Right. And so the alpha male, that's the way we're portrayed, as courageous people of strength and all of that. Right. And so somehow, why has that gotten flipped around as a weakness? And in the Aboriginal culture, a warrior is vulnerable. You know what I mean? And so, the last 10 years is all about decreasing the stigma around, that I'm weak. No, I'm not. I'm a person of, tremendous courage and tremendous strength, because I'm dealing with something that the majority of the population deals with, and that's emotional pain and suffering. Right. So I was like, wow, I'm not alone in this journey.
But you felt alone at the time.
Yeah, because of the stigma.
Mm-hmm. Couldn't talk about it to anybody.
Attached to, what we do. And so, we are now looked at as people of inspiration, and, we're carrying this flag for other people until they, find their voice.
Who's the very first person that you opened up to and told?
Oh boy. It was a long time ago. It was still as when I was playing hockey. My fiance at the time, we were in the middle of a breakup, and I went over to her house one night and basically told her what happened. And that was the first person, that I'd ever told.
Was it a soft place to land?
Yeah, I felt safe telling this person, and but obviously,
how was it received?
I think because she knew my abuser, and I think she was a bit shocked, and but she just listened, and really didn't say a whole lot, and yeah, and then I left.
For about 4 years ago, you did a corporate event that I was at, and I think that's the first time I officially met you. I shook your hand and quietly said, "Me too,"
mm-hmm.
and which I was only able to say the first time about 2 years ago to my wife, and not easy.
No,
not easy. Jesus Christ.
Yep.
And my parents don't know, so I don't know if they'll listen to the show or not.
Yeah, of course.
But you're a very different speaker now than about 4 years ago. Like, it's a big evolution. And some of the things you talk about are different. But of course, your skill as a public speaker is, like, you were good then, like you were, Theo. That was good. But now you're great, truly great. And how has it changed, say, over the last 4 or 5 years? You telling your story, is it getting easier? Is there still some no-go zones for you?
No. I think the biggest thing has been education, is that, I read, studies, brain studies. I always run into experts in the field of trauma, mental health, and addiction, and, they educate me even more. And so, and obviously getting the opportunity to hang out with Kim Barthel, who is probably, I would say, if not number one, close to number one people in the field. And, I have her on speed dial, and she whenever I call, she picks up the phone. And so, that's been a great relationship for me, and a great mentor, and, somebody I can bounce things off of, because she has many degrees. She's an occupational therapist with a degree in neuroscience, with a degree in, so many things. And she's even busier than I am, and she teaches the teachers, who, are on the front lines and working with traumatized people, on a daily basis. And so, that's where sort of that evolution comes from, is I'm always willing to learn, and I'm always working on my stuff. I'm always working on my own stuff, and
it's never ending.
Yeah, it's I always say, I'm in therapy for the rest of my life, and I'm okay with that, because when I unpack another layer, I just get better, and through that process, I can now talk about these experiences that I have in therapy while I'm on stage, because, people need to know that therapy is not, scary. It's not a bad thing. It's just, it's part of the process of healing.
Yeah, you see some people have a pushback. It's like, oh, I don't do therapy. I don't need that, as if it's for crazy people or weak people.
Yeah, well,
it's not the case at all.
They are crazy, and I'm crazy, and I will forever be crazy. I always say I'm still crazy, but it's just more manageable.
Yeah.
And my craziness is what makes me unique and makes me an individual, is, my life experience. And there's no, it's just who we are. It's what makes us. Our experiences are the things that make us, unique and individual.
Tom is on my right here. He's the next guest. I thought he was bringing cameras today.
I was gonna, and then the whole thing I had to explain.
It's all right. It's all right, brother. It's okay. We're making do with our webcam as the camera thing.
This is awesome.
Yeah, we're good. But you can actually, it's probably best either at the kitchen table or one of the tall chairs, Tom, and then you betcha. Shit. Anyway, just before we flipped on the mics, we were talking about forgiveness, because at the Snaps deal fundraiser, and thanks again for doing that, Theo. That was a great night.
It was good, yeah.
I really enjoyed that. Actually, tell you a story. When they were doing the auction, I kept trying to push the numbers up so that to get them a bigger number. I never thought I was actually going to get anything. And so the auction for the hot air balloon ride is like, oh, I've always wanted one of those. And then it went past about $500. Like, I don't know about that. That's a bit pricey. And but the bidding went higher because I was pushing. I was like, yep. And the auctioneer's making fun of me because I'm going, yep. It's like, wait, I'm having fun, man. And then the big one came on for that trip too, anywhere WestJet flies. And I yep. And then I got it. I was like, oh, shit.
Well, that's good. You get to travel.
Yeah, we're going to Ireland in July.
Awesome.
It's gonna be awesome because I just had to go, yep.
Ireland's a great place.
That's my lack of impulse control right there, but it's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. But on that, the one that hit me between the eyes was you're talking about speaking at prisons, and your Grand Cache, if I recall, and you're chatting with one fella, and he says, Theo, you're my hero. And because you're my hero, I went to beat the shit right out of your abuser. And anyway, you will tell it better than I will. But you told him, well, now you're my hero because you didn't do it. Because when he walked in, he was curled up in a ball under his bed. He was like, oh, it looks like you're getting punished enough kind of thing.
Exactly.
Now, at what point in the process, or is it still a process? Like, would you say you've fully forgiven your abuser?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
But it took that scene in the prison to make me realize that, that I was that I was there, and, it was a life-changing moment. And, what, what was kind of ironic was, 5 years ago, Kim and I set an intention that we wanted to start working in the prison system just out of curiosity. And, in those, whatever 22 prisons that I've been in, I've learned the two greatest lessons of my life. And, and I always tell people this all the time. When you're going into relationships or you're a leader, is that your mindset should always be, I want to learn more from you than I can teach you, right? And that's always been, the way that I've sort of lived my life. And sure enough, those guys in prison have taught me, the two greatest lessons that I needed to learn. And the first thing they taught me was compassion, because...
Well, that's the last place you would expect
Mm-hmm.
to learn that lesson.
For sure. But, these guys were so honest and raw and vulnerable and open and willing to talk about their trauma history. And then obviously, the probably the greatest lesson was the lesson of forgiveness, right? And, we showed up at Stony Mountain Penitentiary, and they have a warden there who's a very young man who sort of thinks outside the box. And so they allow us to go there, and we get to do whatever we want with these guys. It's awesome. And so, we're having this amazing conversation with 400 of the baddest dudes on the planet. Murderers, rapists, child molesters, bank robbers, you name it. But I'll say this first, what we discovered is that, the prison system is basically just a mental hospital is all it is. Okay. Because these guys have...
Only without any sort of chance of rehabilitation, really.
Yes, exactly. And that's why this warden allows us to come in, because when we leave after doing a day session with these guys, the prison is changed, right? Because more guys are willing to talk about what happened to them. More of them are looking for opportunities to heal, all that stuff. And so, we got 400 guys in the gym in the prison, and we're having an amazing conversation about trauma, mental health, and addiction, because they all suffer from all three. And so I see this guy in the back of the room, and he is visibly elevated. And so I say to him, hey, you got something to say? And he stands up in the back of the room, looks exactly like Eminem, the rapper. He's got the flat beat cap, tattoos from his neck down to his feet. And, he's kind of got this swagger to him, kind of like a street guy,
Yeah.
And he stands up and he says, Theo Fleury, says, you're my hero. And I was like, wow. Of all the places I thought I'd hear that statement, I didn't think it would be, in a prison. And he said, as you can see, he says, I'm not the biggest guy in the world. And he said, I was a really great hockey player as a kid. He said, when I was 14 years old, he said, I grew up on the north side of Winnipeg, which is a really bad area, Kildonan. And he said, I got involved with the wrong crowd. And he said, when I was 14 years old, I started selling drugs. And he said, I've been in and out of jail ever since. Then he says, you'll never guess who I was with 3 weeks ago in Grand Cache, Alberta. I said, I don't know. Who are you with? He said, I was with Graham James, the guy that sexually abused me, raped me 150 times. And he said, Theo Fleury, because you're my hero, he said, my sole intent while I was in this prison with Graham James was I was going to beat the shit out of him for you. But he said Graham is very heavily guarded, and everybody wants to beat the shit out of Graham James. So he said, I waited and I waited and I waited and I waited. And he said, I finally got my chance. He said the guards left him alone. And I walked into his room and he wasn't there. So I started searching around, and so I went to the left side of the bed and he wasn't there. And so I walked over to the right side of the bed and there he was, curled up in a ball in the fetal position in the corner of his room. And he said, I didn't do anything. And that's when I said to the kid, I said, you're my hero for not doing anything. And, I realized right at that moment that, my abuser was in way more pain and suffering than I was, and that I have a great life and, I have great relationships. I have great people around me now. And I'm not in that kind of pain and suffering. And,
There's always,
and so, I said to the kid, you're my hero.
I love that story.
And that's, when I realized that I was on the path of forgiveness.
There's always more than one kid. These predators always have a laundry list. Any idea of how many kids Graham James abused?
Well, what we know is by the time a pedophile gets caught, on average, they have 125 victims.
Jesus Christ.
Right. So, I know, for example, that the Boy Scouts of America hid 5,200 pedophiles. So if you do the math, that's over 600,000 boys that were molested in the Boy Scouts of America.
And it was hidden.
Yeah. And, you look at Jerry Sandusky situation at Penn State, the one kid came forward and then it was just an avalanche of kids right after. Right. So, and if you think about the Catholic Church, it's mind boggling. Like we're talking millions upon millions upon millions of kids that have been sexually abused.
Do you think a pedophile can be fixed, reformed?
I think certain kinds can, but it's a long, obviously arduous process, and there has to be a certain amount of willingness on their part to, take on, a path and a journey of healing. But, because the brain is so complex and we don't really know unless we put these guys in MRI machines and figure out, how their brains actually, work and what chemicals they're lacking, but, I've always subscribed to the theory that nothing is impossible. Okay. That everything is possible. So with that being said, do I think that certain situations with people who molest children, I think we can get them to a point where they don't do that anymore. But I also believe on the other side of the coin that, it's a long, hard process for somebody to take on.
About every week you see on social media a police alert. Mm-hmm. Okay, sexual predator, we had to let him out of jail. Keep an eye out for him, though. Mm-hmm. And they're let loose when the police know full well that he's still a danger. Do you think that you should be locked up and kept behind bars unless you get rehabilitated?
Good question. Well, we don't have a justice system in Canada. Okay,
Ain't that the truth?
It's a legal system.
It's a legal system,
and that's why, the words sexual abuse and buggering and all these phrases have, you'll hear at a sexual abuse trial is, they use different words to lessen the sentence, right? When at the end of the day, it's rape, right? And rape carries the maximum sentence, right? So, you got all these smart defense lawyers who've come up with these phrases like sexual abuse, fondling, buggering, all these things because they don't have as much oomph as the word rape, right? That's why I say I was raped 150 times.
You never used to say that.
Nope. But I do say it now because I know that that's what it is.
And if you say anything less, it's a euphemism.
Yeah, exactly.
When I was in the Balkan Wars in '94, they called it ethnic cleansing. That sounds like you're taking a shower.
Yeah.
It was goddamn genocide.
Yeah.
It's what it was. But same thing, for whatever reason, to protect the criminals, again, let's invent a goddamn word.
Yeah.
So they called it ethnic cleansing. It's genocide.
Yeah.
And ethnic cleansing, Jesus Christ.
But that's the world we live in, right? This is the world we live in. The whole world is traumatized, right? The whole entire world. There's nobody who has not had a traumatic experience in their life. The whole world is traumatized. And so hurt people hurt people. It's that simple, right? And until that hurt person gets help, they're going to continue to hurt people.
I used to say the root of all assholes is ego. But now I'm thinking about it. I wonder if the root of all assholes is trauma.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, hurt people that's a Wayne Dyer saying, I think. But it is true. Hurt people do hurt people. And if somebody's being an asshole, your natural reaction is to, hey, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And maybe get in their face. But really, the correct response isn't a reaction. It's a response of consideration to just pause for a moment and think, this person has a story.
Yep.
Everybody's got a story. When you were a wild man, you had quite the reputation, and a lot of people that didn't like you on the ice.
Yep.
But have you ever had any of the old crew that maybe gave you a hard time or wouldn't give you the time of day? The guys that you didn't get along with because you were so wild?
No, hockey is
it's not like that?
Played on the ice, right? Hockey's played on the ice. And when you leave the rink, So I wore two different masks, right? When I stepped on the ice, I had a job to do. That was to win. And those millions of dollars that they paid me was to win.
Yeah.
And you do whatever you can to win, right?
Anybody from that old crew that will ever come back to you after you came out and go, oh man, that makes sense now. I've connected the dots.
Lots of guys. But lots of guys have also said, hey, I played the same way as you, and I have the story behind it too.
Yeah.
Right? So, I always say the best anger management class I could have ever taken was called the NHL. And it's true, right? It's totally true. So, I just, and what's interesting is, you have all of these mental health groups all over the world. And, it's like, Bell, let's talk. Well, what are we talking about? What are we actually talking about?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. So let's talk about trauma, which is the catalyst and cause of our mental health issues.
Have you ever taken one of those mental health first aid courses?
I have not.
I want to take one of those.
Okay.
Different veterans groups put them on all the time, but I'm sure, like you said, trauma is trauma is trauma.
Yeah.
I took my course in Montreal for peer support, and a good course, I suppose. But I think one of the biggest things is in what not to say, and to not trivialize and not compare traumas. And what would you say to somebody about the let's talk idea? If somebody wants to be an ear, or if somebody's comes to you as a confidant and wants to talk about their trauma, do you have some do's and don'ts for the listener? Like for the person that's listening to somebody that's sharing?
Yeah. Don't give advice.
There you go.
Don't ever give advice.
Why not?
Because it's not your place.
Yeah.
It's not your place. Your place is to, listen. That's it. Just sit there and listen. Be attuned, be present, hold the space, and listen. That's it. You don't need to give advice. And secondly, I believe you. I truly believe you. And then probably the one question I would ask is, what happened to you? What happened to you? And that's it. Right? And the only time I would give feedback is by telling my own story. Is I connect to something in your story that I say, oh, okay, I can tell him or her.
But without making it about you.
Yeah.
Right.
Just, it's called the sideways approach.
Okay.
I know that you know that I know that you know that I'm talking about you, but I'm over here. We're not in the trauma. We're over here. Right? We're not, because so many therapeutic processes in the past have, let's go after the trauma. Let's get the trauma. No, let's put it out here. Let's put it at 40,000 feet, right? Let's not put that person back in their trauma, right? Let's not re-traumatize the person who's already traumatized, right? And so by storytelling, you take that, you take the nervous system out of it, basically, right? And I think that's the problem, is we don't have enough conversations like the conversation we're having right now, right?
Being open and honest.
Yeah. And what social media has taught us is that we can be anonymous and not have to stand behind, what we're saying. And, it's created just a whole bunch of bullies, and it, social media, I call it social insanity, because what it's taken out is me getting up and driving out here and sitting down with you and having a conversation. Because if we did this over the phone like we did the first time, it's not going to have the same oomph. That's why I agreed to come here.
Yeah.
Is because this is more important.
Well, I appreciate it, brother.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these, again, like all the interviews that I listened to you do, with the exception, of course, of it was more of a hockey topic, which I'm actively avoiding, as you've noticed, because I'm sure you're hockeyed out. Yeah. But George Stroumboulopoulos has got to be the best goddamn interviewer I've ever heard.
Unbelievable.
Yep. Actually, it's around in a roundabout way, a little hockey-esque. But I wanted to talk. You guys are pretty good buds, aren't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say we're best friends, but when we see each other, we have a mutual respect for each other. And but yeah, sitting on the red couch is an experience that he just makes you feel comfortable. He's like Canada's big brother.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate to see what happened to him, with Hockey Night in Canada, but.
Well, that's where I was going to go. How do you think he did at the job? Do you think
I thought it was great? I thought it was fresh. I thought it was new. Hockey Night in Canada has been so the same for so long,
Yeah.
Don Cherry's still there.
I like watching the body language. What I saw is I thought he did a good job. He clearly knows hockey. Mm-hmm. Like he knows the subject matter. But what I would see is he would ask a very deep, intuitive question, and they don't look at him like he's got three heads. Mm-hmm. Kelly Rudy, the look on his face, he's like, the hell are you talking about, George? And they switched topics and not want to engage in this more philosophical question that he had come up with. Yeah. And it just didn't seem like he was getting along with the other guys.
But therein lies the issue with vulnerability. He was trying to get Kelly Rudy to be vulnerable, and Kelly Rudy didn't want to be vulnerable.
Yeah,
and he got really, he froze.
Yeah.
Right? And
super uncomfortable. You could see it on camera. It was hilarious.
Yeah. And now that Ron McLean's back, all Ron McLean does is tell stories. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't really, they don't really challenge the NHL. They don't challenge, they sort of, they deal, kind of a pillow fight. It's not a, you know what I mean? Like when something's blatantly wrong with the system, they stay away from it. But, the pillow fight stuff, yeah, so, and that's why we're in the state that we're in, that nobody wants to talk about, because you have 4 men on the panel who have the opportunity to, be controversial and maybe a bit vulnerable and, whatever, and they refuse to go there. That's why I switched to something else, because it's the same old rhetoric over and over again.
Perfect segue. Another thing that I heard you say that really strikes home for me, and it's very, very relevant to the veteran community as well, is the idea of letting go of the glory days. And that's why I didn't give you an introduction this time with your hockey background. I mean, yeah, hockey superstar, got it. Olympian, blah, blah, blah. But that's not you anymore. That's what you did, not who you are.
Yes.
There's, and I do this at our peer support group. And if you ever want me to do this at any of your groups, just let me know. I'd love to do it. But it's called IR theory. It's identity versus role theory. I actually learned it in sales training of all places.
Yep.
And I've taught it many, many times. But it's going through through that lesson of the difference between who you are and what your role is, that they're not the same thing. Because people identify, I'm a hockey player. No, you're not. That's something that you do, or it's your job, or it's, you may love it, and it might be, you might identify it, but that's not who you are. Like, and I am not kissing your ass when I say this, Theo. I am not. I swear to God. You're my absolute favorite hockey player. But can you guess why?
Nope.
It's not because of the points. It's not because of the accomplishments. It's because of your ridiculous hustle, right? And I'm an Edmonton guy. Right. I almost wore my Oilers jersey just to be an asshole today.
Right.
But I've always noticed that it's not just because you're 5'8", 5'7",
5'6".
5'6". It's awesome. And I'm only 5'9". But you would markedly be working harder than anybody else on the ice, like every time. And you were always on 11, and I'd always say, long before I ever met you, Jesus Christ, if the other guys had the hustle of this guy, any team that you're on, if they were keeping pace with you as far as hustle and grind, they'd win the cup, or at least be in the finals
right.
every damn year, just based on drive and grind. Now, was it because you are a shorter guy and you always had something to prove, or is that just your work ethic?
Well, what was my greatest asset? Skill first and talent. Okay. But hard work can beat talent.
Yeah, that's my next question right there.
Okay. So, and obviously I'm 5'6", and I think I played my first year at 150 pounds. Okay. So the average height at that time was 6 feet tall. The average weight was 200 pounds. So guys are 6 inches taller and 50 pounds heavier than me. So how am I going to use my greatest asset, which is talent and ability, against guys that are bigger, stronger, faster, all that stuff, right? And so I had to create room on the ice so that I could use my talent and ability to shine. Speed, agility, all these things. And I realized quickly in junior that, my talent and ability got me here, but what's going to get me to the next level? And that was how hard I played and how hard I competed, right?
You just did what you had to do, and that's what you thought you had to do.
And I realized early on that, not everybody who I was playing against had that drive. right? So I used that against them because I knew, or, I was willing to die in order to win. And I knew that there was probably 75% of the guys on the other team who didn't have that philosophy and that mindset. So I could take those guys on the ice and do whatever I wanted to them, right? So I took advantage of their inability to want to compete at the highest level.
Wasn't, and correct me if I got the story wrong, wasn't Guy Lafleur like a pretty mediocre hockey player as far as talent was, but he was the hardest goddamn worker, and that's what made him the legend?
Yeah. That's what makes,
was that accurate?
That's what makes every great athlete great,
Well, even the great one of great ones, 99.
Mm-hmm.
First on the ice, last off the ice. Not true?
Yeah.
Totally true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's got more talent than you can believe, but it was the work ethic.
Yeah.
Work ethic beats talent every time.
Every time.
Every time. There's a book on that talent is overrated, and too many people, I think, are kicking back, relying on their talent and their skill, their IQ, but they don't got the hustle. Their feet aren't moving. They're not making it happen.
Yeah.
Frick, best interview ever.
It's all good.
It is good, brother. We're hitting all the stuff I wanted to hit. I got one. You did me a huge favor at the snaps thing, and by the way, all three veterans appreciated it. I got feedback from all three of them. You did a shout out for three guys I know. One was Paul Bangma, who interesting guy. I did a show and then I lost the damned audio, so I got to do a new show with him. But he's a guy that left the Army, actually became a drug dealer, like Walter White level kind of shit.
Wow.
And anyway, later on became a drug addict. His heart is now destroyed. He walks around with a heart in a bag, and he's hoping for a donor, right?
From doing too much cocaine?
Or whatever the drugs were. Mm-hmm. Yeah, whatever destroys your heart. But he's been in the hospital with strokes and other complications. But so that was Paul Bangma that you did the shout out for. Another one, Tom Anderson, this frickin' guy. Tom lost his legs on my tour back in 94. That was his second tour. It was my one and only tour. It went right off the bat. It was April. We just got there. Kaboom. And it had his legs blown off with an anti-tank mine. And then all these years later, that was 94. And all these years later, now he's got shrapnel coming out of his damned eye. Wow. Who knows where it's been all this time,
right?
But it's coming. So he's probably going to lose the one eye. And he's fighting cancer because, that just wasn't enough.
Right. Wow. Unbelievable.
And his number one thing right now is not for him. He's doing fundraiser for service dogs, not for him, but for other veterans. Mm-hmm. He was trying to get out Don Jerry to give him a shout out. We'll talk about that later. But so he did a shout out for Tom Anderson. And the third one was a guy I served with here in Calgary, Mark Binney, who's was cleared of cancer. He was good, and it's back. So those are just three guys that I know off the top of my head. And when you took the time to just do that 30 seconds, it's all it was. And you said, don't quit before the miracle. I want you to know, brother, that all three of them, it mattered. Like that was like a holy shit for all three of them. Right. So thank you so much for that.
I just feel very blessed that, I've been able to come out on the other side, right? Because, I read almost every day somebody takes their life.
Yeah.
And I really believe that's unnecessary, and I know I was there 15 years ago. I had a fully loaded pistol in my mouth, ready to pull the trigger and end my life. Not because I wanted to die, but I was completely exhausted.
But because you wanted to live.
Yeah, but I was completely exhausted from living in emotional pain and suffering for the majority of my life. And I tried everything on the planet. And, I couldn't drink enough. I couldn't snort enough. I couldn't be in enough fucked up relationships to, numb out the pain anymore. And, here I was faced with this decision and choice to, Was I going to die? Was I going to live? Well, I chose to live, but guess what? I have no fucking clue how to live life on life's terms, right? All I know how to do is cope.
Yeah.
Right. But that set me on the path of healing and self-discovery and unpacking, my trauma history. And by doing that, here I am trying to help as many people as I can get to where they want to go.
You had said, and it struck me because I know a lot of people in the same boat, that if you have even one drink, you lose all your progress that you've made over all this time. With even one. It's good that you know that you can't moderate it. Some people can moderate it, some people can't. And
well, I would say they can't. We have this saying, one's too many and 1,000's not enough.
Yeah.
Right. And, I work with many people who struggle with addiction, and they often say to me, that's, I can control it. Okay. Well, come back to me 3 months later. Well, they're right back to where they started, before they got sober, so I think abstination and staying away from it is what true sobriety really is. Why do you need a chemical, right? Do you know what the most used drug on the planet for trauma survivors is?
Caffeine?
Alcohol.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
Right? And it's legal. So, and what neuroscience tells us is that alcohol doesn't mimic any other chemical that we have in our brain. So what happens is the brain doesn't process alcohol. It basically goes up there, sits in your brain, and burns a hole in your brain. That's what alcohol does. That's why, when we get drunk, we have struggle with our balance, struggle with our speech, all that stuff is because the brain has no idea what to do with this chemical.
And I didn't know until I started reading Dr. Jordan Peterson's book, The 12 Rules for Life. A hangover is withdrawal.
Yeah.
That's why hair of the dog.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Because.
When was your last drink, Theo?
September 18th, 2005.
Holy shit, you remember the day.
Yeah. I have to.
So what was it that made that day? Like
I have no idea.
It was just
It
was.
was divine intervention.
That was just the day that you decided.
Well, it was, I often say this, the day I asked for help was the day that I saved my own life.
Yeah.
It was the day that I asked for help, and that's the day I asked for help. And it was from...
Who did you ask for help? Like, where did you go?
The divine intervention.
Yeah, that's a good place to go.
I asked the universe for help. And, 5,000 days later, still helping me.
You inspire so many people, Theo. Who inspires you?
People like you, people who tell their stories, people who find their voice and talk about what happened to them. That's my inspiration, right? Because it's an amazing thing to watch somebody find their voice for the first time in their life. And I see it almost on a daily basis, right? People come up to me either after a speaking engagement or, as much as just walking down the street or in a mall, and they come up to me and say, "Hey, I read your book and you told my story, me too." And that's the first time they've ever said it. And you can see visibly the transformation that happens. All that shame that they've been carrying around for however long disappears. And their eyes become brighter. Their posture becomes better. And they have a little more bounce in their step. And that bounce in their step is what I call hope. It's because they have hope now.
There's a concept that I call, and I'm not saying that I came up with it, it's just what seems right to me. I call the Great Awakening. Mm-hmm. And I'm seeing it on so many fronts. And listening to you talk, I'm realizing that as leaders step up like yourself and say, "Hey, this is what happened to me," and all the Me Too's, that has an effect on the group consciousness. And it changes society. And again, not specifically talking about hockey, but the game has changed so much. And I think how the game has changed from more rough and tough, putting on the foil, coach, from a more brutal gladiator sport into more European style skill.
But the game is cheaper. Like, there's more cheap shots because there's no respect.
Do you think that that's a reflection of society in general?
Huge.
Yeah,
Huge.
right?
Social media has taught us to disrespect each other. That's what it's taught us. The biggest lesson we've learned from social media is it's taught us to disrespect one another.
Don Cherry said once about fighting in the game, and I wanted your opinion on it because I got mixed feelings, that when you take fighting out, the game gets dirtier because people aren't held to account.
Yeah.
You agree?
Well, I think it's even deeper than that because we used to police the game. The players policed the game. And then they implemented the instigator rule, which took all accountability out of, what was happening on the ice. And now we've got, 30, 40 cameras on the ice. And so they see every single incident that happens and goes on. Right. And so, the NHL now polices the game. And I don't think that's a good thing. I think when it was in the players' hands, we had a lot more respect for each other.
Well, it was cowboy justice.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, I miss cowboy justice, even though it was a life of violence. When I was in the 3rd Battalion, PPCLI in Victoria, they were more cowboy than the other 2 battalions. They just were.
Yeah.
Anybody that was there will say it. The other 2 battalions will argue it. But you had a problem with somebody, you go fisticuffs, you sort it out, and when they're down. Like, you're not going to kill them.
Yeah.
But I have solved a lot of problems and made some pretty good friends
Yeah.
by cracking them in the jaw.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
And I was always a smaller guy too. I didn't actually sprout the last couple inches till I think I was 18, 19.
Right.
And I had to, because I'm a bit of a different duck, I stuck out like a sore thumb. So I had to fight.
Yeah.
I had to fight. And of course, it was always the big assholes.
Yeah.
And, but it sorted shit out. Now, the person that can't fight or won't fight, they're always going to get victimized. But still, I had that opportunity, and it cleared up a lot of problems for me. They say fighting doesn't solve problems. Well, bullshit.
Yeah.
It kept me from getting picked on, and we've lost that. Like, there is no, like, that's not the Army anymore. And that's not a bar fight anymore. Now you get in a bar fight, chances of dying pretty good.
Yeah.
How have we lost that respect for each other?
Because we're too sensitive. And and the people who are sensitive don't want to work on their own shit. So they need an excuse. So they'll jump on any bandwagon they can. So they have an excuse for their anger, for their rage, for their trauma, right? Because it's a projection.
And just in general, the ability to take responsibility. A friend of mine sent me a dash cam the other day. He got in an accident. Thank God he's okay. His wife's okay. They're a bit buggered up. They need some physio. But I watched this video, and the idiot driver that caused the accident wasn't what caught my eye. It was the other 2 vehicles that obviously saw this serious accident and buggered off, and they were gone.
Yeah.
That's not how the world used to be.
No.
You see somebody that needs help, you stop what you're doing, and you help.
Yes.
2 vehicles. It was a bad accident, Theo, and they buggered off. They're gone. That's the way society's gone.
No question that, we're sending the wrong message, right? And yeah, I could go on and on and on and talk about, where
you segued and then I lost it. I wanted to talk about letting go of the glory days. Then I was talking about identity role theory, and then I got off track. And for you, how important is it to honor the past, but to move on, to not hang on to your hockey career as your only identity.
Yeah, it was funny. I had a conversation with somebody about that the other day, and I said, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm still in the game," and I was like, "Wow." And when I retired, I wanted to get as far away from hockey as I possibly could, because I see so many guys that, that's their identity, right? And they could provide so much more to society because, they played a team sport, they have leadership skills. They have all of these intangible things that, the world really needs now. And, and so that, that's why I chose to, move away from, from the ego part of, of all of that. And it's funny. People say to me all the time at events or whatever, "Where's your ring? Where's your gold medal?" And I go, "I have no idea." Because I go, it's not about that.
Yeah.
I go, the last thing in the process of winning is they give you a ring and they give you a gold medal. I said, what I get addicted to is the process of winning.
There's so much insecurity and such a sense of inferiority out there. When you say gold medal, I have 2 medals that I wear on Remembrance Day.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a military funeral, I'll wear them, But there's something called stolen valor, where somebody, and I'm sure it happens in the NHL. Oh, I played in the NHL, and they didn't, But there's
Right.
people, these claims of accomplishments that he didn't actually do. It's particularly gross when somebody says that they did a tour that they didn't, or that they served and they didn't,
Right.
or even exaggerating their service, saying, "Oh, I did this, that, and the other," and when they didn't. But the driver of it is insecurity.
For sure.
It's like keeping up with the Joneses sort of thing, and an inner feeling of not feeling good enough.
Yeah, which is what trauma teaches us, right? Remember, I made those 4 points.
Yeah.
Is trauma teaches us abandonment, neglect. I'm not good enough. I'm not lovable. And do I even exist in the world? And every time we get triggered, it triggers either one or all 4 of those beliefs, right? And so the process of getting well is changing how we see ourselves in our situations, right? And so making up stories, to feel good enough, to feel like you belong and not abandoned and all of that is, what it's all about. And that's the rewiring of the brain. That's the rewiring process of the brain that needs to happen, right? It's like, my PTSD was, I couldn't sleep ever because every time I put my head on the pillow, all I can see is the rape scene.
Yeah.
That's all I could see. So I never slept. So that's why I became addicted to alcohol, is because the more alcohol I drink, then eventually I'm just going to pass out.
Yeah.
And that's the only way I was able to sleep. And through the process of EMDR therapy, I was able to, change, the scene, right? Where I became the director of the movie.
Yeah. I've been doing ART, very similar.
Yep. And, changed my life. And now I sleep.
What do you got? The reason I smiled when you said you can't sleep, that's, I frickin' know that world.
Yeah.
Can't sleep, the nightmares. Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
I'm starting to get some relief now, but it's not fun.
Yeah. The movie that keeps playing in my head. That's what I call it.
What do you got to say to to the people that, because I've done this. I'll back up here a bit. Years ago, long before I knew that I had PTSD, even though it was glaringly obvious, but I had nobody to tell me, right? I mean, my behavior, it was ridiculous. But a friend of mine, or a guy that I met, a fellow soldier, said, "Yeah, I'm in therapy for PTSD." And I said, "Oh, oh man, I read this book, and Tony Robbins says that all you need is about 20 minutes of neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and shit, you're good to go, man. So I can't believe he didn't knock me out.
Don't even get me started on Tony Robbins.
Christ almighty. But what do you say to the people that say that there's a quick fix, or watch this 20-minute TED Talk, it'll change your life, knowing just how big the struggle of overcoming trauma is? Like, what do you guys say?
Those things are fine.
Yeah.
But it has to inspire action in you, right? You can listen and watch and do all that stuff, but if it doesn't inspire action, then was that TED Talk really that good? Do you know what I mean? It has to inspire action in you, because you're the only person who can do the action part. I can't do your action for you. You have to do it yourself, right? You have to make the choice and you have to make the decision. I can stand up on a podium all day long and talk about whatever. But if I'm not inspiring action, if I'm not giving you enough inspiration to take action, then I'm not a very good speaker, right? I need you to take the action, but I can't do it for you, right? Can't help somebody that doesn't want to help, right? That's it. And so, you know, and that's why we're in the state that we're in. So we have the highest awareness around the subject of mental health, mental illness, whatever phrase you want to use. The highest awareness ever. But on the other side of the coin, we have the highest suicide rates in the history of our planet. So why isn't all this awareness being turned into action and getting people well? Well, we're not talking about the trauma. That's why. We're not talking about trauma, which is the catalyst for mental illness and addiction.
And I think it's compounded by the fact that we live in an unnatural world. You know, that's why there's such a huge drive for people to go camping. We got in the backyard here a 28-foot trailer. Well, why in the hell would you go 30 grand in debt to have this? Because the drive to get out of the system is so strong. Mm-hmm. You know, and whether people connect those dots or not, all they know is that I got to get out of the city, or I need a break, or I need to recharge my batteries. It's just our lifestyle in general is so unnatural. You know, working basically being economic slaves.
Yep.
And because it's such an unnatural system, that is such a compounding effect, and it makes us so much less resilient, I think, to trauma.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no question that I had lots of resilience built into me as a young kid because I faced trauma, right? Which served me well until I got to a point where I had a breakdown, and then I had to change some things about my resilience is still there, you know, but, you know, it's managed differently. It's, you know, how I react in different situations that, you know, it's different. But the action piece was I had to do the work, right? If I don't do the work, we're not sitting here. I'm not talking about, you know, all of these topics, because without experiencing my own healing journey, then I can't talk about, you know, going to an EMDR therapist. I can't talk about going to equine therapy. I can't go, you know, where I've used all of these things, right? That's why I go to the golf course almost every day, is because it's meditation for me.
Yeah, I can't golf for shit, but I do like the driving range for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Because it's just you and the ball, and it's doing what you don't want it to do.
And you talk to people who own motorcycles.
Yes, sir. Mine's in the garage.
Yeah, mine's in my garage too.
Attaboy, let's go for a ride.
You know, it's the greatest stress reliever ever, because you don't have to think about anything.
Yeah. Well, and you're hyper-focused on the road, so your brain cannot wander.
Yeah.
If it wanders, you die.
Yeah.
You know, when you're on a bike, you're always looking around, okay, who's going to kill me today? Mm-hmm. There's the Rolling Barrage coming up. You should join us for a ride. It's the Veterans Ride, but veteran supporters as well. And it's going to be coming through Okotoks, actually.
Oh, when is it?
Scott Casey's putting it on. I'll get you the dates after.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah, the Rolling Barrage. That's another show that I lost because of my technical idiocy. Yeah, so I'll have to get him back on here too. Sorry, Scott, I'm an idiot. But it's a great ride. It goes coast to coast, but you can do 10 minutes or do
Oh, cool.
3 hours, whatever,
Nice.
whatever you want.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, for sure.
Well, I ran into a really great group. They're called BACA, Bikers Against Child Abuse.
Yep. There's a bunch at the local church here,
Yeah.
Victory Church, I think, and I met some of them.
Amazing group. Amazing group of people. Yeah. So,
two things that, and then we could probably wrap up. And you can always say pass, right? We were talking about the power of forgiveness, the necessity of being able to forgive, and the incredible strength and difficulty in forgiving your abusers. Now, and I'm just speaking from my own perspective as well, I find that self-forgiveness is even harder.
yes.
Was there any of that with you?
Well, I think that was the first thing I realized in that scene in the prison was I got to the place where I forgave myself.
Just bring the mic in and down a little bit there.
When I was in the prison, that's when I discovered that, I was at a place of forgiving myself, right? And to me, forgiveness is freedom.
Hell yeah.
It really is.
It's the gift you give yourself.
And we don't talk about it enough, right? Is that it's part of the process.
It's because people prefer, we're talking about cultural shift in the Great Awakening. The counterbalance to the Great Awakening is this expanding victim mentality, right? Now, having a victim mentality, me bashing that isn't saying you're not a victim. It's not saying that.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying, it's acknowledging it, but saying, don't let it beat you. You have to be bigger than your trauma.
Yeah.
You have to, or you will always be a victim and you will never get healthy. You can't be a victim and be healthy. You can't. Would you agree?
Absolutely, for sure. I lived in victimhood for the majority of my life.
And that's where the anger and the bitterness and the rage.
Lived in my past. And I had every excuse in the book. Yeah, it's warranted excuse, I was raped 150 times. My parents, I grew up in a addictive home, I had all the excuses, but was it doing me any good? No. I had a gun in my mouth. And that had nothing to do with, you know what I mean? It was the fear of the action. The fear of the action. I didn't want to take the action part. I didn't want to, have to go to therapy. I didn't want to have to talk about my feelings. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. But, it wasn't until I did that my life got better. Right? And that's why I always say, find your voice,
Something I wanted to explore with you, and then we'll wrap up. And I don't know if there's much there or not, but I thought it was super interesting, and I thought it might take us down a path. But in Playing with Fire, you talk about right after a game, I think in New York, and hanging out with homeless folk around the burning barrel. And was that did that happen like a couple of times? Was that a regular thing?
I think it happened a couple times.
A couple of times?
Yeah.
What do you think was, and here's where I'm going with this, because at that time in your life, you're big superstar and everybody knows your name and NHL All-Star and all this awesome stuff, right? But on the inside, my guess is that you didn't feel like you deserved all of that you had accomplished. Because there's a concept where, and I believe this to be true, I don't think there's a lot of maxims in life, but I believe this is a maxim, that you can only rise to your level of self-concept, for the most part. And that you can only be as much as what you think you deserve to be, and so in my mind, listening to the story, I thought, here's Theo with 20,000 fans, cheering for him. But really, what he felt like on the inside was reflected by hanging out with these homeless folks around the burning barrel. What do you think?
It's a good question that I need to think about for a second. So I grew up in a very small town. Okay, there's nothing small town about New York. Okay,
I've never been, so
okay,
yeah.
So there's nothing, and it moves at an incredibly fast rate.
The New York Minute.
Yeah. So, there's lots of stimulation, not necessarily good stimulation. And when I was on the ice, I never had a problem with any of that. It was easy. It was easy for me to put on my suit of armor and do what I love to do because I worked my ass off to get there. Okay. But when I left the rink, I didn't know who I was because I don't relate to, people who work on Wall Street, that sort of elitist thing. I'm still a small town kid.
Yeah.
Okay. And what I found around the burning barrel was a whole bunch of people suffering same way that I was suffering, feeling alone, feeling that I didn't really belong in, New York. And probably some of the most intelligent, because I'm attracted to intelligent people. I like smart people. They stimulate my curiosity and my brain and all that stuff. And so some of the most intelligent, smart people that I've ever met in my life were the guys standing around the burning barrel. And they had trauma, lots of trauma. And so that's where they were on their journey. And, on the outside, they didn't look successful, but on the inside, I needed that relationship to say to me that it doesn't matter what kind of clothes you wear. It's what matters in the inside that really, really matters. And found so much inspiration in having those conversations with these people, And I would say for the most part, they were happy. They were okay. They were okay. And, I always say, I guess the universe put me in that situation to do research for what I'm doing today, because everything happens for a reason, right? And there are no coincidences in this world. And, when I surrendered September 18th of 2005, I surrendered, right? Hit my knees and asked the universe for help and guidance and whatever it was. And since then, the universe has been guiding me every step of the way. Every person that I meet, every conversation that I have, every research paper that I read is for a reason, right? And since the day that I surrendered, my life has only gotten better every day. Yeah, I've struggled lots. I've probably hit more rock bottoms in sobriety than I ever did drinking. But it's because for the first time in my life, I'm actually unpacking my trauma history. And it's not easy, That's why people don't do it. It's because it's hard.
Nope, not easy at all. Toughest phone call I've ever made in my life. I was absolutely on the bottom, and I threw out an email to the Royal Canadian Legion, which was responded to immediately, by the way,
awesome.
which is great. And I said, look, I'm not saying I have PTSD. I'm not saying that because I didn't know, right? I just know I'm fucked up.
Yeah.
And I know I need help. And I know that my children are suffering because of this guy.
Mm-hmm.
Because of my behavior, I am nowhere near the dad that I should be. Because I keep losing my shit over nothing.
Yeah.
And It was my boys that and my wife now, because I'm remarried, that pushed me to picking up that phone. But God damn it, Theo, it weighed 1,000 pounds.
Oh yeah.
But I picked that son of a bitch up and felt shame, all of it. Not unlike I've been doing a set of interviews at the Veterans Food Bank. Talk about courage. The first time that they walk into that place, same kind of idea. The first time I picked up that phone and said, "Look, can you point me in the right direction? I just want to get a checkup from the neck up, and tell me what the hell this is.
Yep.
Like, what the hell is this? And can I do anything about it? I'm not saying it's military related. I know I'm fucked.
Yep.
I need help. And if I hadn't done that, Theo, Jesus Christ, I wouldn't be married. I'd probably be out of the house.
Yep. Yeah.
I don't think she would have kept me.
There's no question. But what's interesting is that, those of us who've experienced trauma in our life, guess what? We're the healers. We're the healers in this world. Those of us who've experienced trauma, we're the healers. And when we choose a path of healing, it automatically puts us in that role of, I'm a helper now, I'm a healer.
Well, it puts us in a position to do it because we've walked the path. Like you said, therapy for the rest of my life. This is, if you take your foot off the gas in trauma repair for any amount of time, you will regress.
Yeah.
You've got to keep pushing. It's a never ending push.
Yeah.
But it just is.
Yeah.
And that's what people don't get. Oh, just get over it. Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
No.
No,
because trauma gets stored in your body.
If I find a magic pill, I'll let you know.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's a whole other topic about how big pharma owns, pretty much every major disease on the planet, and they don't do it to create cures.
Do you know the name Wim Hof?
No.
Okay, we're gonna talk, pal. I've been studying him for a while, but I'm just starting his breathing techniques now. Anyway, they call him the Iceman, and he's actually in university textbooks and shit now.
Okay.
We'll talk more about Wim Hof. But through the breathing techniques, you can actually hack into your autonomic system.
Yes.
So the thing that they say that you can't do, well, he's proven that you can do. So he's impervious to cold. He's impervious to disease. He can't have disease. Pretty sure it's impossible to give him cancer. They've injected shit into him that 12,000 other people, 100% of them got sick. Him, zero effect.
Nice.
Right? And anybody that he trains... And it's easy to train, apparently. You just do it.
Yeah.
Follow the path, completely impervious. But the relevance here is mental health as well.
Of course.
And there is his belief, and I'm going to continue to go down this road and to learn more about it. But it helps reset, because you are tapping into the autonomic system, helps you reset your brain as well.
Yes.
Because people don't understand, trauma is like a stamp. It's like a stamp. It's like a crack in the windshield.
Yeah.
I did this in class once. So everybody has the odd chip in the windshield. The more you drive, the more chips you get. The more rough the road, the more chips that you get. But what we do is we have this ability to magically put the chips over to the side and just ignore them until you can't ignore them anymore. And it weakens the overall structural integrity of the windshield as well. And that's trauma, and you can go to the windshield surgeon and get it so that it's strong again.
Yeah.
And a bit more clear to look through, but the cracks are still there. The scars are there.
Of course.
And I think that's trauma.
No question it's trauma. This, somebody at one of our workshops got up and said something pretty profound. And she said, trauma is the string which binds us all together as human beings.
It's true.
And I've never heard a truer statement than that in my whole entire life. And so,
that's why we should have compassion for the assholes.
That's right.
Because I've certainly been an asshole.
Of course. Of course. And what's really cool is that, every relationship is repairable. Every relationship that we've ever had in our life that's gone sideways is repairable.
If both sides are willing. If both sides are willing to,
And if
to,
both
to,
sides
to
are
forgive
and
and
if,
to grow.
and if both sides are willing, it's repairable.
Yeah.
That's why I say it, you know. And we can continue to learn until we stop breathing.
That's why we're on this planet, brother.
You know, so but you know what Big Pharma has taught us is that there's a pill you can take that is gonna you know what I mean?
For everything there is a pill.
Yeah.
For a pill there you can do
But what
everything,
you just said is that there are breathing techniques and breathing exercises which I can use to heal almost anything.
Yeah.
So why isn't that mainstream? Why is that not mainstream?
It's getting more and more. Wim's got some pretty damn good coverage. He was on Joe Rogan's show.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big. Have you ever been on the Joe Rogan show? I'd love to see you on there. God, that
lots of people have
asked you that.
have asked me that. Yeah. So
I'm sure he'd get you on there.
yeah,
But,
but that's the thing, you know, and that's why I joined that group. We're all a little crazy.
Yeah.
Out of New York is because their whole entire philosophy is holistic healing. You know.
As long as it's real, you know, this Wim Hof stuff is all scientifically proven because all the scientists said, "Fuck that, it's impossible, no way."
Yeah, but what?
And then he proved it.
But even saying that, why wouldn't you try absolutely everything on the planet?
Triage, like, and this is why, because to try and to fail, to try to fail, to try to fail, it gets exasperating fast. And I wouldn't want somebody to lose hope. So I think hedge your bets and try to bet on the fastest horse as best as you can. You know,
But
that's what I would say to that.
right. But I believe everything works if you believe it's going to work.
The placebo effect.
You know, so
Well, that's a part of it.
you know, and pretty much everything that I've tried has given me a new tool to put in my toolbox. Whether it worked or not, I still took something out of the experience.
But you kept your feet moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Always looking for the next, you know, the next thing. And what's really kind of interesting is in the last probably 2 or 3 years, I have run into intuitive healers.
Interesting.
And it's been really interesting that, you know, that's sort of, you know, what's been put in front of me is I'm meeting all these people who are intuitives. And I really believe that that is the next sort of wave of healing.
Well, we got a whole other show on that, brother.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, it's all out there. I think if you take something away from our conversation today is that, you know, there's healing is possible.
You just took it out of my mouth. I say healing happens.
Yeah.
Healing happens. It does.
And
But there's no magic goddamn pill.
no. And it's up to you to decide, am I willing to go to any length to get better? Right? And that's where it always falls back on your plate. And yes, it wasn't your fault.
You gave 3 pillars. One of them was physical activity, which is so true. I mean, I don't think it's the be all end all.
No.
But me being back in the gym, I'm feeling better
course.
because I'm back in the gym regular.
course.
What were the other 2 pillars?
Emotional,
Okay.
right? So compassion, empathy, right? All these things that Brene Brown talks about is really important. And then spiritual,
Okay.
right? And to me, you know, spirituality is not about the white bearded guy in the sky. I don't get that concept. But I do get the concept of relationship, right? And to me, relationship is spirituality. Because the reason why we were put on this earth is to be in relationship with one another, not suffer in silence, right? And so instead of me using the word God, I use the word universe because it works for me. You know?
Sure.
And what's interesting, I was in a treatment center in Los Angeles, and one of my counselors had 21 years of sobriety. And I said to him, I said, what's your higher power? He said, a tree in my backyard.
Interesting.
I looked at him and was like, really? He's like, I'm 21 years sober. I was like, okay, I get it. He's 21 years sober, and his higher power is a tree in his backyard. It's not for me to decide what your higher power is.
I'm a Freemason. I haven't been active in years.
Mm-hmm.
Me and a friend are looking to get back into it, though. And to be a Freemason, and no, we don't run the world. I wish to God. Where's my piece? Where's my bit of it?
Yeah.
But one of the prerequisites is that you got to believe in God. However, we don't care if it's the tree in your backyard, if it's a Coke can, or the great spaghetti monster. We don't care. Do you believe in something bigger? Because if you don't, your world is so limited.
Yes.
It's just so limited if you don't believe in something greater. So we don't care if you're Muslim, Jew, Christian, or something in between. I'm none of the above.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm pretty sure there's a creator out there.
Yeah.
Of some sort. I'm not so arrogant as to think that I, with my tiny little mortal brain, can conceive what the creator actually is, But for Masonry, that's good enough. To believe in a higher power, you're good. Are you a decent human being? Okay, come on in.
But the reason why there's so many sects and denominations is the very basic belief in community. And that's how this is going to get solved, is they create community. And to me, community is how this is going to be solved. You get a bunch of people in a room, you use vulnerability. That vulnerability creates safety. And then once you have safety, that's when the magic of healing happens. It's that basic and that simple.
And I'd have to say, not an online community.
No.
People have got to start putting that shit down, quit relying on it, leaning on it like a crutch, and getting face to face.
Yeah.
Face to face. There is no replacement for face to face interaction. There is no replacement for it.
Well, and that's why I call myself an expert in relational trauma, is because my trauma happened in relationship, and how am I going to heal? In relationship.
Hell yeah.
Healthy, happy, vulnerable, empathetic, compassionate relationships. But I need to have that in myself first in order to,
Got to lead by example.
So, that's why, I always talk about community is, at Breaking Free, which is our foundation. That's what we've done. We've created a safe.
The office is here in Okotoks, isn't it?
Yep.
Just off.
My personal office, Fleury 14, is in Okotoks.
Okay.
But we don't really have an office.
Final question for you, then we'll wrap up.
Okay.
I've been saying that for half an hour. Why Calgary? Why'd you come back? Like, you could live anywhere you want.
Yeah.
On the planet. Why here?
Well, I love the entrepreneurial spirit of Calgary. And that entrepreneurial spirit creates give back, creates charitable people, right? Is
terrible drivers, though.
Yeah, whatever. you need to work on that. I just love that Calgarians and Albertans give back so much to their communities, and I didn't know really at the time, other than, my kids were here and I needed to repair that relationship with them. And, obviously I need to repair the relationship with the moms too, you know? And so, I'm a Western Canadian kid, but I can't live in a small town, right? I don't want to live in a small town. I need stimulation. And so, Calgary was a good fit. And, obviously the fans were always supportive and so all of that combined was, great place. And, being 45 minutes away from the Rocky Mountains is pretty cool too.
It's pretty damn cool.
And there's lots of great golf in the mountains. So, So yeah, I just think that this is a special place that people don't really know about, and there's a lot of good human beings in Calgary.
There sure are. And I've been really noticing that in Okotoks. It's just a phenomenal town with just great people.
Yeah. So,
Theo, thanks for being here, man.
Anytime.
I'm Mark Mankey, and this is the Mankey Show Podcast.